Craig Lindsey, the pastor at the First Presbyterian Church in Skaneateles. And I love stories. In the final episode of the Prairie Home Companion, Garrison Keillor described, I've forgotten more than I remember. I've forgotten people's names, I've forgotten places I was supposed to be, I've forgotten all the facts and dates that I learned in school. But stories, I remember. Stories are important to us. In the book of Genesis, we're told a story about the creation of the world, and everything is formed by God, which is a relationship of everything to God. But also, everything in creation is formed out of the nothingness. Everything is formed in relationship and interdependent upon everything else in all creation, so that if anything goes extinct, if anything enters into the void, then all creation suffers. I love to tell the story because telling stories reminds us of whose we are and what our relationship is to all of life. In the book of Genesis, God is described as forming us in the image of God, which does not mean that we're all male or all female or have two hands or two eyes or one nose, but rather, I have a member of the church who's a composer. He was the head of a music department at a great music school, and his son was a music teacher, and the son married a piano teacher, and their children recently each got married. And in that, at the reception, there was no question about whether they knew how to dance or what the selection of music would be. They knew music. They understood implicitly about rhythm, about balance, about dancing. That to me is what it is to be created in the image of God, that you know implicitly the rhythm of God. You know implicitly who you are and how you're in relationship to your partner so that you can glide across the floor and dance through life. I love to tell the stories because in telling stories, we retell and retell in different circumstances and we come to appreciate things differently. When 9/11 happened, we were all in trauma. We told the story of the destruction of the world in Jeremiah and how suddenly there was no sound and no life and no light, and we were afraid. But now, 15 years later, we look at this in terms of the parable of the lost and the found. In Jesus' parables of the lost and found, there are repeated events of those who have lost something, be it one of her silver coins or one of the sheep, and the one involved searches everything to find that thing. This week I've heard several who've described that they were born after 2001 and they don't remember what life was like before. What is it to have lost something when you never knew you had it? But those of us who were here at that time, we remember. I have a good friend who, as a pastor, was a first responder who went down to Battery Park in Manhattan. And because he was there and caring for the firemen and those who were first responders, he developed lung cancer himself. As he lay on his deathbed, people asked him whether it was worth it, whether, knowing that he would lose his life, he would still do it all over again. And he laughed and said, "It's not about heroism. Instead, this is a recognition of all that's been lost, and our responsibility as a people of faith is to try to find, to try to restore and redeem and make whole."